Chapter 1 covers the characteristics of living beings, homeostasis and how it is controlled, and anatomical terminology. What is anatomy? Anatomy refers to the different parts of our body, knowing the different names. In Greek, it actually means cutting up. Also then physiology means how do those different parts function. Anatomy and physiology go hand in hand together. But here, this is the important part. This is showing what our body is made up of, starting from the smallest to the largest. I'm going to write these words out larger for you because you're going to have to be able to put these in order on the exam. So here, the smallest things making us up are atoms. Atoms, for example, hydrogen is an atom, oxygen, carbon, sulfur. When more than one atom get together, they make up molecules. And so, for example, H2O, water, it's a molecule because it's made up of more than one atom. Molecules can become larger molecules. Those are called macromolecules. I'm going to skip that. It was on that picture, but we'll skip it here because it just means molecules. Then molecules make up the organelles of our cells. Organelles are like the little organs of our cells. They have different functions. We're going to go over those in chapter 3. Organelles get together to make up our cells. Alright, so here we're getting larger and larger. Cells that look similar to each other have similar functions. They're grouped together. They make up tissues. So for example, connective tissues, epithelial, muscle tissues. When tissues get together, they form organs. Organs that work closely with each other form organ systems. And finally, all the organ systems together make up an organism. All right, feel free to pause here so you can copy this down. Next are the different characteristics that we have in order for us to survive, maintaining boundaries between internal and external environments. Well, our skin is responsible for this, for example. Mucous membranes also, so we need to keep what is on the outside of our body so that it doesn't come inside. The stuff that we don't want. Next, movement. Well, we do that through our muscles. But here, this word you may not have heard of before. Responsiveness, definitely know this. Here, the definition is the ability to sense and respond to stimuli. So, example that I like to use is, for example, you feel a bug walking on you. Well, so you're sensing that. Something that's happening to you, something from the external environment. Also, then you respond to that stimuli. So, by trying to get the bug off of you. Okay, so know this word. Digestion, yes, we have that in common. We need to be able to break down the food molecules that we eat. Definitely know metabolism. Metabolism means the sum of all chemical reactions. Sum meaning all, total, that occur in our body cells. So it's all of our cells. For example, brain cells, muscle cells. So metabolism is occurring in all of them. And metabolism has two parts to it. Catabolism means breaking apart the molecules inside of our cells. So for example, breaking apart food molecules. Glucose, breaking apart glucose is a good example. So this is a type of metabolism. And the other type of metabolism, anabolism. So then this means building larger molecules. Alright, so essentially metabolism just means breaking apart and building larger molecules. Next one here, excretion. This one's easier. Removal of waste from our body through urination or defecation. Next one, reproduction. We don't need it to do it to survive, but to pass on our genes, it's important for us. And growth. Growth is important so that we'll be able to fend for ourselves, find food for ourselves. For the survival needs, these make sense. We need nutrients for energy for our cells, but also building the parts of our cells. We'll go through in chapter 2 the different types of nutrient molecules like carbohydrates, fats, proteins. Next, oxygen. This one we're going to cover in more detail in chapter 4. We need oxygen to get the energy out of the food molecules. So energy release from food molecules. So here, when we get the energy out of food molecules, we make ATP. So ATP is the energy molecule. Water is important for our body. It's important for the chemical reactions, like the metabolism, like we were just talking about. It's also in our blood. Next one, body temperature. We need to have a stable body temperature because it affects the rate of chemical reactions, meaning metabolism can slow down if the temperature is low, and then it can speed up if it's too high. But here, the problem with a high temperature is that proteins can get denatured. This word denature means no longer working. We're going to see this word again, this denature, denaturation. Next part, it's important for us to have an appropriate or stay in an appropriate atmospheric pressure. This is for adequate breathing. Now, the pressure of a gas actually relates to its amount. At high altitudes, there's less pressure of oxygen, pressure is lower. Also, that means that there's less oxygen at high altitudes, and so oxygen intake decreases. But our bodies do perform homeostasis, as we're going to see in just a little bit, to adapt to the low oxygen levels. Okay, and so next part here, homeostasis. Putting double stars for this one. Homeostasis means maintenance of a stable internal environment. Meaning, if there's something wrong with the body tries to fix itself. And so it may not always be successful. And so this is a self-regulating system, meaning it's trying to fix itself. Homeostasis has 3 parts. Well, first we need to detect whatever the problem is, whatever the level, the unstable levels. So here, know that the receptor could be an organ or special cells, and so these are detecting the issue. Next, the receptor sends the information to the control center. Control center is usually the brain, and it's the decision maker. It decides how to fix the problem, what to activate, so that hopefully things go back to normal. So the control center is activating the effector. So the effector could be a muscle or a gland that responds to the control center and causes the necessary change in order to fix the issue. Know the definitions for these 3. This diagram is showing how the information goes from one to the next. So the receptors are sensing the issue. In this case, the stimulus refers to whatever the issue is. So the receptors send the information to the control center. They could be sending this information through nerve signals or through hormones. So now the control center decides how to fix the issue. Then the information goes to the effectors, meaning the effectors are activated by the control center. So here the effectors could be muscles or glands. So then they cause the necessary change, and hopefully then the issue goes back to normal. This picture here is to show how the receptors, control center, effectors, how they work in order to fix an issue here. Now the upper part of this picture, and by the way, don't worry about the details of this picture. This is just to show how these work. Here the stimulus means the issue. And so the upper part of this picture says body temperature rises, meaning if you're feeling warm. So here, in this example, the receptors are these special cells in our skin and brain that detect the issue. And so these are the detectors I'm going to put here just to review. These detect. Then the receptors send the information to the control center. Control center is the decision maker. So here, it's going to activate the next part, effectors. And so this activation of the effectors could be done by nerve signals or a hormone. In this example, the effectors are the sweat glands. And so sweat glands, they release sweat, sweat evaporates, and then hopefully you feel cooler as a result. Alright, the bottom part of this picture is about what happens when we feel cold, body temperature falls. So here, the receptors are the same as the one above. Here, the special cells in our skin and brain, they detect the issue here. They send the information to the control center, so here it's also the brain. But now the effector is different. So now the effectors are the skeletal muscles. And so when we get cold, we shiver. And so here the muscles are working. When they're working, they need to break down the food molecules, and so that generates heat. And then hopefully the body temperature goes back to normal. Now there are two types of homeostasis, negative feedback and positive feedback. Negative feedback is the most common type. This is what we just went over. So here, this means that things are going back to the normal range. They call this negative feedback because you want to go in the opposite direction of the issue. The different examples, body temperature regulation like we just talked about, blood pressure regulation, glucose levels. So that's all negative feedback to get things back to normal, to the stable level. The other type of homeostasis, positive feedback. Now this is more uncommon in the body, and this gets a little bit confusing. Let me explain it here. So here, the change is intensified instead of reversed. The effector, activity of the effector is increased instead of decreasing. This is short-lived. So here, let me talk about the two examples of positive feedback. So hopefully this will make more sense. With the blood clotting. And so here, if we get a cut, we start bleeding, the blood is coming out of the blood vessel, so we need to stop that. So in our blood, we have these particles called platelets. Platelets are attracted to the area due to the chemicals released by the injured cells. So then platelets come over to the area, they stick together, they stick to the cut part. But if they're not enough, they release chemicals that call over more platelets. And so then more platelets come over. So then those may release chemicals to invite over more platelets. So here, because the number of platelets is increasing more and more, and so if you would like to write in increased number of platelets, and so here the key word is increasing more and more and more until the goal is achieved. The other example, uterine contractions. So the contractions increase more and more during childbirth until childbirth is achieved. Okay, and this is the second, this is the end of the first part of the chapter 1. So then look for the second part of chapter 1.